In 2016, Panama finished a $5 billion rebuild of its canal. Bigger locks, bigger ships, nearly double the cargo capacity. 7 years later, that same canal was turning ships away by the dozen. Not because a lock failed, not because a ship sank, because there was not enough water to fill the chambers. The Panama Canal does not run on the two oceans it connects. It runs on rain, and the rain stopped. Most people picture the Panama Canal as a ditch, a channel cut through a narrow country, salt water on one end, salt water on the other, ships sailing straight through. That is not what it is. The Panama Canal is a staircase made of fresh water, and understanding that single fact explains everything that went wrong. The land in the middle of Panama is not at sea level. It rises through a continental divide, and cutting all the way down through that spine was beyond what any engineering of the era could manage. So instead of digging down to the ocean, the builders went up. They dammed the Chagres River, drowned a valley, and created Gatun Lake, sitting about 85 feet above the sea. Ships do not sail through Panama. They are lifted 85 feet into an artificial lake, carried across it, and then lowered back down the other side. Nothing pumps them up. The locks are gravity-fed. When a chamber fills, that water is coming down out of Gatun Lake. When the chamber empties, that water goes out into the ocean. Every single vessel that crosses Panama takes a share of a freshwater lake and pours it into the sea permanently. In the original locks, a single transit spends somewhere in the region of 50 million gallons. That is not water borrowed. That is water spent. For most of a century, this was a beautiful arrangement because Panama sits in one of the wettest places on the planet. The watershed feeding Gatun Lake collects an enormous volume of rainfall every year, and the lake refilled faster than the ships could drain it. The canal was, in effect, running on weather. Free, reliable, and completely outside anyone's control. Then came the expansion. By the 2000s, the world's cargo ships had outgrown the locks. A whole generation of vessels was too wide to fit, and Panama was watching that trade sail around it. So Panama voted to build a second, larger set of locks, and the work ran from 2007 to 2016 at a cost of roughly $5.25 billion. New chambers at Agua Clara on the Atlantic side and Colossus on the Pacific. Chambers big enough for the ships that had left the canal behind. The engineers understood the water problem perfectly well. The new locks were built with water-saving basins, side chambers that catch a portion of each lockage and feed it back into the next one instead of letting it run to the ocean. Those basins recover a substantial share of the water in every cycle, and they are genuinely clever engineering. But there is a limit to what recycling can do when the chamber itself is far larger than the one it replaced. A bigger box needs more water to fill, even if you save some of it. The expansion raised how much cargo Panama could move, and it also raised the ceiling on how much fresh water the canal could consume in a single day. If the scale of this is getting to you, hit subscribe. We take apart a new Colossus every week. For a few years, the ledger held. Then in 2023, the rain did not come. An El Niño year landed on top of an already drying watershed, and it turned into one of the driest stretches the Canal Authority had on record. Gatun Lake dropped. Not by inches, by feet, and it kept dropping through the dry season with no meaningful refill in sight. At that point, the canal stopped being a transport problem and became a bookkeeping problem, measured in water. The authority did the only thing it could. It rationed transits. Normal traffic runs somewhere around 36 ships a day. They cut it to 24, then 22. Then set out plans to go lower still, down toward 18, if the lake kept falling. They also cut the maximum allowed draft, which is the depth a loaded hull can sit in the water, meaning the ships that did get through had to carry less cargo to ride higher. What happened next tells you exactly what the canal is worth. Ships began stacking up at both ends, dozens of them waiting for a slot. The canal auctions apportioned of its slots, and with supply strangled, the bidding went somewhere nobody had seen before. One tanker operator paid close to $4 million for a single booking. To move one ship through, ahead of the queue on one day, that is not a toll. That is what desperation costs when $100 billion of annual trade is funneled through one staircase of fresh water. The canal authorities' own revenue took a serious hit, projected in the hundreds of millions of dollars for that fiscal year, on an asset that had just absorbed $5 billion of investment specifically to handle more traffic. They had built the capacity. They could not fill it. And here is the part that does not appear in the brochure. Gatun Lake is not only the canal's water supply, it is the country's. That same reservoir provides drinking water for roughly half of Panama's population. So, during the drought, the canal and the people of Panama were drawing on the same shrinking lake, and every ship lifted over the divide was, in a literal sense, water that did not come out of a tap. The busiest artery in global shipping is in direct competition with the citizens of the country that owns it. Panama's proposed answer is another dam, a new reservoir on the Rio Indio, at a cost in the range of $1.5 billion, to bank more water for the dry years. It would very likely work. It would also flood a valley of farmland and force thousands of people out of homes and villages their families have held for generations, which is the same trade the original canal made in 1913, when it drowned the Chagres Valley to make Gatun Lake in the first place. A century later, the fix for the water problem is the thing that caused it. Take more land, hold back more river, and hope the rain cooperates for another 100 years. The rain is the whole system. Every ship, every container, every dollar of toll rests on precipitation falling over one watershed in Central America, and no amount of concrete changes that. Panama spent $5 billion solving the wrong constraint. They engineered brilliantly for ships that were too big, and the thing that actually stopped the canal was the weather over a lake. That is the part nobody mentions about the Panama Canal. It is not a passage cut through the earth. It is a bet placed on the sky, renewed every single day, by ships that have no other way across. $5 billion bought bigger locks. It could not buy rain. Next time, another Colossus that solved the wrong problem brilliantly.